Hey guys, Jason here from Usable Smoke Productions, and in today's video I'm going to show you how you can create a template for tracking drums. Alright, so let's dive in. First and foremost, the rationale and the reason for tracking drums, you could have multiple reasons for doing this. Maybe you want to drag in some of your favorite songs that you enjoy playing grooves to and record yourself playing along. Put out some YouTube videos of your cover version or your drumming version of one of your favorite tunes. Perhaps you are tracking drums for another artist and you want to be able to drag in their WAV file into your project and use a comfortable and familiar template for you to do your work, and then you can bounce it out to them. There's lots of reasons for doing this. Maybe you're in my situation where you do a little bit of everything. You record drums for other artists. You want to record your practice sessions. Maybe you're a singer-songwriter and you want to create a multi-track template that you can bring into other projects and whatnot to make it a very quick and easy process to lay down your drum tracks to. So really, there could be a variety of reasons, but we're going to go ahead and show you how to do this. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create one single audio track, and this is going to be used for dragging in, WAV MP3, whatever kind of song you're tracking your drums to. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just title it Drag Audio Here. Not Darg. Sorry for the typo. Drag, not Darg. All right. Drag Audio Here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my inspector window here and I'm going to create no input. I'm not going to use any of my mic pre's or anything like that. This is just a place to drag in the audio files that I'll be working with later. All right, now we're going to go ahead and we are going to create new tracks, one for each of the microphones that we are going to be using on our interface. Okay, so in total, I have 12 mics that I'm working with. I have a snare top and bottom. I have a hi-hat. I have a ride cymbal mic. I have 2 overhead microphones. I have 3 tom mics, and I have 1 kick drum mic. All right, so and 2 room mics, by the way. So that totals up to 12. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to create 12 audio tracks, and I'm going to go ahead and just one at a time. I'm going to go ahead and label these. One for each one of my microphones. So overhead left, I'm going to label overhead right. I'm going to do my hi-hat, my ride cymbal, my kick drum, my snare drum, top, my snare bottom, and we're going to do my first tom, which is a 10-inch Yamaha Maple Custom. Next is my tom 12-inch. Then we have a tom 14-inch. And then we're going to do the stereo room. So I've got a left room mic and I have a right room mic. Okay, so now we have all of our instruments labeled, okay, for single mic applications here. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open up the mixer window. And what we're going to do is we're going to assign the inputs for each of these instruments. All right, so right now you'll see that I have the input defaults to input 1. And what I've done in advance here is I've actually labeled all of my inputs for my audio interface into Logic so that I can quickly find them through the drag and drop menu. So quickly how to do that, you go to your mix window here, go to your mix tab, and you go to I/O labels, and you can see that it will allow you to select your inputs from your audio interface, and you could name them under this column where it says long. So you can see input 1 and 2. I have labeled SM57 and 58. I do that for my vocal stuff. Input 2 is my large diaphragm condenser. I do that for vocal work as well. Sometimes when I'm tracking guitar, I'll use that large diaphragm condenser as well. Then I've got inputs 3 and 4, overhead left and right. Inputs 5 and 6, my hi-hat and ride cymbal. Input 7 and 8, my room left and right. Now the reason I use my 8 inputs here is because I use phantom power, and I want to use phantom power all from one device. That's just a preference, but I have that set up using my main multi-channel interface, which is a Behringer Euphoria UMC 1820. Great interface, very affordable, clean mic pre's, Midas mic pre's, really, really nice. And then I have an expander unit, which is the ADA 8200, also from Behringer. It connects via optical cable, and it allows me to use 8 additional mic pre's. And I use that for all of my close mics, my kick drum, my snare top and bottom, and my toms. And I've got one extra one there that's not currently being used for anything. All right, so let's go ahead and assign these labels. So I'm going to go to my first overhead left track here, and I'm going to go ahead and assign the input to input 3. I'm going to do input 4 for my overhead right. For the hi-hat, I'm going to go ahead and do input 5. For the ride cymbal, I'm going to go ahead and do input 6. For the kick drum, I'm going to go ahead and go to input 11. That's from the ADAT. The snare top, I'm going to go ahead and go to input 12. Snare bottom, I'm going to go ahead and go to input 13. Tom, the first tom, the 10-inch tom, I'm going to go to input 14. The 12-inch tom, I'm going to go to input 15. The 14-inch tom, I'm going to go to input 16. My room left microphone, I'm going to go to input 7. And the room right, I'm going to go to input number 8. All right, so now I have my inputs correctly assigned to my multi-channel interface. And you can see these are all single mics, so they all appear as mono tracks. So one thing that I find very useful once I've gotten this far in the process is I know in advance that when I send an audio track, if I'm tracking drums for another artist and I want to send them my drum track, it's very important that rather than sending them each individual track, they can hear what everything sounds like all together. So I'm going to create a drum bus. All right, now eventually, if you're doing this professionally, you will send them the stems. So you will send them each single audio file, your hi-hat separately, your ride cymbal separately, kick separately, and so forth, okay? But if you're just bouncing ideas back and forth, you want to send them the complete package, okay? So easiest way to do that is to create a drum bus. So I'm going to create a track stack here. This has some added benefits. We're going to create a summing stack. So it allows you to mix all of these single tracks as subtracks, and then you can save the whole thing as a patch. This also makes it very easy if you're going to be doing this type of thing from within another project, right? So I'm going to go ahead and create that. And you'll see that it is created, it says sum1. We're going to rename that as drum bus. Okay, so if I go back into my mixer window, you can see that it has created my drum bus here on bus 65, which I have set that up so that that's where it will begin sending everything. Buses 1 through 64, I have that reserved for other things when I'm working on other projects and whatnot. So my drum bus starts at bus 65. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create some stereo buses for the microphones that I will want to process together. Okay, so the overhead left and overhead right microphones, I will process those together as a stereo, um, from a stereo bus. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and highlight both of these in the mixer window, and I'm going to create a bus by going to Output, and I'm going to select Bus, and I'm going to go to my next available bus, which will be bus 66. And you'll see that this creates an auxiliary track down here. And just so I can keep track of all of them, I'm going to rename it Overhead Stereo Bus. Okay. All right. I'm going to do the same thing for my hi-hat and my ride. This is just a preference thing for me to process them. I process them singularly, but then I like to create a bus for them so I can kind of fade them into the mix together. Again, that's just a preference, but that's how I do things. So I'm going to go ahead and go to bus 67, create a bus. It creates the new auxiliary track here. And I'm going to call it hi-hat ride bus. All right, so you can see that it creates stereo buses for each of these. Okay, and in fact, I'm going to label that a stereo bus. All right, there we go. Yep. Okay. So now what I'm going to do for my kick drum, I do something kind of a little different for the kick drum. I only have a singular internal microphone that I'm using, to record the kick. I wish I had an inside and outside, two separate mics, but I'm on a budget, saving up for one. I'll have one someday. But for now, what I've done is I create another track which I can simulate an outside kick microphone. Okay, so there's a couple of ways that you can do this. The easiest way I feel to do this is to, well, you know what? I'll show you both ways. What I can actually do is I can create another bus for this kick drum, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to treat it as a send. I'm not going to create it as an output just yet. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click the next available bus, which is bus 68, and you'll see it creates an auxiliary track here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to title this Kick Out. All right, and I'm going to rename this microphone Kick In. All right, so what this does is it's going to send the signal from the internal kick microphone, and it's going to send it to this new auxiliary track that I've created. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this up to unity gain, which is 0 dB, and I want to make sure that I right-click on this send, and I use this as a pre-fader send, which means any processing that I do to this kick drum, it will not send any processed signal to this kick out track. It'll send just a duplicate clean version to this kick out track, which I can then process differently. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and right click on the auxiliary track that I just created. I'm going to right click on create track. What that's going to do is it's going to send it directly next to my kick in track here. Okay, so as you can see, I've got the kick in. It's being sent to bus 68, which is the kick out. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight both the kick in and the kick out tracks, and I'm going to send the output to another bus. Okay, and that bus will be bus 69. It'll create another auxiliary track here, and we're going to call this the kick bus. All right, now when it comes to kick drum, I'm not going to be panning the kick to the left and the right. It's going to be right up the center. So I have the option of leaving this a stereo bus and just not doing anything with the panning, or to make it a little easier, I can just make it a mono bus by clicking on the input button, and now you can see that it has changed my meters from a stereo meter to a single mono meter. Okay, so I can toggle that on and off just like that. I'm going to keep that a mono bus. All right, moving on, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with my snare top and bottom. I'm going to create the output. I'm going to take the next available bus, which is bus 70. It'll create another auxiliary track for me. And I'm going to call this snare bus. I'm going to, again, make sure this is a mono bus because I'm not going to be panning my snare drum. And I want to make sure everything is in phase and all that. Next, what I'll do is I'm going to create a stereo bus for my toms. And we'll take the next available bus here, which is bus 71. And I'm going to call this one Tom's Stereo Bus. Okay. And I'm going to move on now to my room mics. And I'm going to highlight both of them. And I'm going to take the next available bus here as an output, which will be bus 72. And I'm going to call that Room Stereo Bus. All right, so now what's really cool about this, okay, if we go to our other window here, I can click on my summing stack for drum bus and it will simplify everything here. Okay, so if I have other tracks, other instruments and things like that, it gets rid of it from the view and makes it very convenient to clear up your screen. It does the same thing in the mixer window. Okay, so here's my drum bus and here are my individual buses here for the overhead stereo, the hi-hat and ride stereo, my kick bus, my snare bus, tom stereo bus, room stereo bus, and so forth. Okay, so what I'll do in another video when we're actually going through the drum tracking process, I will show you how to set some basic levels. I'll show you how to phase align your microphones. I'll show you all of the tricks of the trade in getting a good drum recording from your playing, using your microphones and your multi-channel interface and all of that good stuff. But one thing that I should also say is you'll develop, as you're doing this, you'll develop some preferences. You may not want to have your buses appear at the end of your mixer window. You may want to move them and appear from within your drum bus. And if you want to do that, that's fine. We can do the same thing with your that we did with our kick out file. We can actually highlight the bus and you could click create track, and that will then move the stereo bus up to where it's up to where it belongs. In this case, it'll move it up here with the overhead left and right. So you can go ahead and do that if you want. I'll click create track and you can see it moved it right over here, which has its benefits. If I'm working out of, if I'm not working within the mixer window and I'm working here in my tracking window, I can see where my levels are here. I can pull up or pull down the volume on these faders here for my individual tracks. I can also do that very quickly on my stereo bus here. Okay, this is actually really good too for automation and things like that. It allows you to see things kind of as a whole. So that happens to be my preference. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for all of these. We're going to create track. Same thing here with the kick bus. Create track. Create track. Create track. Create track. All right. And you can't move things around from within the mixer window. It just highlights. But what you can do is you can go back here and you can move these to where they belong. All right. So I have my overhead left and right. There's my stereo bus. I'm going to go ahead and move my room stereo bus down here to the bottom. I'm going to move my tom stereo bus down here. I'm going to move my snare bus down there. And my kick out bus is already taken care of. Kick bus underneath that. And I'm going to move my hi-hat ride stereo bus down over here. All right, so we're getting there. The next thing that I'm going to show you, this is all a matter of preference. This is just, again, organization-wise, how I like to do things. I like to color code everything. Oh, my room stereo bus here is not in my track stack, so I can just move that right up in there. There we go. Now it's in my track stack. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and start to, again, this is just preference. I'm going to go ahead and start to color code everything. So I'm going to right click on my summing stack, and I'm going to go to Assign Track Color. All right, so again, just a preference. I like tracking drums in red. I just do. It's just my preference. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and go to my individual tracks, and all my individual tracks I'm going to select as the next shade of red. All right, so it just makes it easier here. So what I'm going to do really quick is I'm just going to go through all of them, and I'm going to do exactly that. Go to all my individual tracks. Oh, I'm losing my mouse pointer there for some reason. Didn't want to work. There we go. So I'm going to take all of my individual mics, and I am going to color code them as that next shade of red. And I'm going to do that also with my kick out. Okay, so there it is. Perfect. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to all my buses. I'm going to highlight those, and I'm going to make sure that I can color code those buses to the next shade of red. All right, so there you have it. Now I've got all my drum tracking here appearing in red, and it allows me to move and maneuver quickly to each instrument that I may be working with. All right, another thing that you can do, and I'm going to go ahead and just expand this a little bit here. All right, so another thing that's fun that I enjoy doing, again, if we're creating a template, templates are meant to be organizational, but let's be honest, we can actually have a lot of fun with this as well. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually create icons for each of the instruments that are a little bit more fun than Logic's stock icons. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go to my overhead left, and I'm going to go ahead and select what I use for my overhead left microphones. Now, one thing that you can do is you can use, Logic's stock icons, and they have quite a lot to offer. You can select them, go through them and all that good stuff. You can also bring in pictures from other sources, and that's what I prefer doing. So I'm going to go ahead and select my microphones here. So I've got my overhead left and right. That's what I use. Okay, those are my Audix microphones that I'm using. So I'm going to go ahead and select that as my custom icon. All right, and then I use my condensers here for my hi-hats and my ride. All right. The kick in, I use my Audix D4. I'm just going to go ahead and create a bass drum there. And for my snare top, I use a 57. Alternatively, you can just select the actual drum here. If you don't have any custom icons, I'll use my 57 there as well. So you can go ahead and go through this and select your custom icons. I use my Red 12s for my room mics. Those are great microphones, by the way. So I won't go through and do all of this right now, but this is another thing that you can do to work with your template and make it your own. Okay, so that concludes our video. We've shown you how to create a template. Very important, what you're going to want to do is you're going to make sure you save this as a template. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Save as Template under my File menu, and it saves it in a different location, right, in your Project Templates folder. And what I'm going to call this my drum tracking template. So there you have it. It's saved now as a drum tracking template, and I can do my recording and whatnot. And after I've done that, I can go ahead and save it as a separate project, and I can then reuse the template for other projects. All right. I hope this video was helpful to you. Again, we will continue learning more about tracking drums and all of that good stuff in another video. But this will be part 1 of the series, and that's just creating your template and organizing your workflow to track drums. All right. I hope you found this video helpful. If so, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Until next time, happy music making. This is Jason from Usable Smoke Productions, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.